Hello and welcome into the Stretch 5 podcast, your official source for basketball unofficially. Coming to you live from the spacious spare bedroom apartment studios, I'm Brad Sturgeon, and joining me today as always is the co-host of Stretch 5, Brian McCullough.
Back for another week. What's up, Brad?
Not too much, man. Just looking forward to getting this podcast in and watching some more basketball today. We had a couple games coming up. Not sitting in with us this week due to what David Stern calls wedding reasons is our quality control and NBA Jeremy Linsider, Marie Rush. Despite that, we soldier on. And if you would like to support our troops, you can reach us on Twitter at Stretch5Pod or by email at stretch5podcast@gmail.com. Today we're talking more NBA playoffs, the USA Olympic roster for Rio, why letting an online poll name your research vessel is a really bad idea, and much more.
Breaking down the game so you won't have to. This is X's and O's on the Stretch 5 podcast.
Jumping right into it, we had another big week of NBA basketball. We had a number of games going on, a number of series going on, probably the most interesting being the Oklahoma City Thunder and the San Antonio Spurs, who kind of went back and forth and battled throughout the week. So we'll start with that. What did you think about the last two games of that series? I think it's, because the first game happened while we were recording this last week.
Right, yeah, that first game was a total blowout. The Spurs came out and just manhandled OKC. But, that was a little feeling out process. And these last two games have been indicative of what we expected this series to be, a grinded out, competitive matchup from start to finish. And so it's been competitive like that for the last two games. And it's up in the air, but that game too, the way it ended, that's definitely something that we need to talk about, because that was something that no one had ever seen before, and even the officials they didn't know how to react to something like that.
When you leave Charles Barkley, Kenny, Ernie, and Shaq all kind of speechless about what they'd just seen and the way that finish kind of transpired with Manu Ginobili getting elbowed in the face and Dion Waiters pointing at his foot and the ref looking at his foot while Dion Waiters is elbowing him in the face. Kevin Durant getting fouled, Westbrook getting held, Steven Adams getting mobbed by the fans, which is something I don't think we've ever seen. And then the most impressive thing was Patty Mills not making a shot,
Yeah, he was wide open for that shot too. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better shot, and he just point blank missed it.
Straight up flubbed it. I mean...
But there were so many issues with that play alone. At first you had Ginobili stepping on the line, which was a violation. And then, of course, you had Waiters shoving Ginobili, giving him a little shiv to the chest. The ref was looking right at him, too. And just didn't call. I don't know if he didn't know what to call or just was, shocked that he saw Dion Waiters do that or what. Or he was just in the moment. But he was staring right at Waiters when he did that, and nothing happened.
The thing that kind of gets me about that whole sequence is at the end of the game, after it's all over, after it's already been settled, we're in, the press is in the locker room, and they're asking Waiters, hey, what did you think about that play? Did you go after Ginobili like that? And his answer was, he stepped on the line first, so that's the actual foul. And to me, that's not an excuse. You can't throw your elbow at somebody like that. It doesn't really matter to me that his foot was on the line, because people's feet are on the line all the time in the NBA. There's probably 10 or 15 plays a game where somebody throws the ball in and their foot's on the line, and nobody cares, because why would that matter? That's not... I mean, it's kind of a competitive advantage in the situation that Ginobili was in, where he's trying to block the inbounds pass, but even still, that's a violation. That's a minor rule break, I'd say. Hitting somebody with your elbow is never a minor violation. And
no, I mean, they should have called something, whether it be a personal foul, a technical foul, or some type of violation, because that's not a basketball play. And so, but the thing is, San Antonio still had an opportunity to win the game. Regardless of what happened, Waiters hitting Ginobili, Kevin Durant getting fouled, the Spurs still had an opportunity to take the game with that Patty Mills shot, and they blew it. But then you have to ask yourself the question, if a violation was called, don't you think the Spurs, Poppy would have called a timeout, drawn up a play for the Spurs, and they would have had a better shot than what they got with Patty Mills?
Well, with Ginobili too, or not Ginobili, I'm sorry. You look at the other game that happened actually last night between the Atlanta Hawks and the Cleveland Cavaliers. The end of that game, we had another situation. It was the end of the game. Jeff Teague's had enough. He goes after LeBron and shoves him, and they're not afraid to call the flagrant. I mean, he gets, he's out of the game then, and he's probably looking at something more coming for this next game. Maybe not a suspension, but certainly there's going to be some sort of punishment going forward. It's just really inconsistent when you have a guy going after another player with his elbow in one game, and it's not only is it a non-call, it's one in a series of bad non-calls, and then the next night or very soon thereafter, you've got another game where something probably similarly as egregious. I'd say those two things were pretty comparable. One dude throwing an elbow at a guy standing right in front of him, another one throwing a guy out of bounds in frustration into the fans and really crushing one poor fan that LeBron James ran over, fell out of his chair, flew backwards, ended up with his feet in the air, and LeBron had to come back and be like, dude, you going to be okay?
Yeah, so. And I hate to say it, but that's what the NBA does as far as with their officiating. It's usually after the fact. They'll see something happen, and then they'll be proactive after it's been done. And so they see what Waiters did in that Spurs and OKC game, and then the very next night they see, Teague with a frustration foul just shoving LeBron out of bounds. And so they know they have to call something based on what happened the night before. They can't just let that go. They
shouldn't need to know they need to call something, though, I don't think. Like, that should be the standard. You should automatically call stuff like that. But it's been a weird year for officiating. I mean, I've been calling it, like with the Zodiac, they got the year of the dog or the year of the tiger or the year of the dragon or whatever.
Right.
And this is the year of the whistle. Like, it's straight up, if you're calling something, if you're not calling something, if you should have called something and it's really, really obvious and you just straight didn't. Like, there's been a million instances, specifically in these playoffs, where teams have just gotten completely thrown under the bus by bad officiating. And the fact that we now have this 2-minute, sort of wrap up of what the refs were doing, the fact that we've got sort of a miniature version of where they messed up, and it seems to be more often than not several calls every night, doesn't help things, because you can go back and say, yeah, you should have called that. That would have fixed the game. Things would have been different. Maybe it would have turned out another way, but you didn't, and now you're telling me you were wrong. It's an insult to injury kind of situation.
And really, it's been all season, but when you get into the playoffs, that's when things typically come to light, and you start to see the details. And so you're starting to see the amount of mistakes that these referees are making during the entire game, and more importantly, in the last 2 minutes of the game. And so, these 2-minute reports they're a joke. We talked about this last week, where it's just telling us things that we already know. We knew we got fouled. You didn't call it, but then you want to let us know that, hey, we got it wrong. That's great, but that's not going to change the outcome of a game. It's done with.
They to go to your point, where it's such a joke the way they're officiating these games, in addition to this 2-minute thing, it's so bad that, like, nobody takes these fouls seriously, to the point that at the end of that Game 2 blowout for the Cavs and Hawks, you had Charles Barkley going, you got to take somebody out. Like, when you have one of your analysts saying the solution here is clearly to go intentionally foul somebody and take them out for the game, I mean, that kind of shows you where things are. Like, if that's your solution now, isn't to play better defense or not let them do this or whatever, it's you're disrespecting me, I'm going to go take you out. Well, that's a pretty solid damnation of the state of officiating in the NBA, more than anything, aside maybe from the state of the Hawks defense in Game 2.
And just to go back to that last play in the OKC Spurs game, the refs, they released a statement on that last play, and it was just hilarious what they said. They told us that they had never seen a play like that, and that they would use it for training moving forward.
I mean, that kind of speaks to how egregious that was. Like, to be fair, that does kind of speak to the refs being like, wait, he did what? Like,
right.
Because what Deion Waiters did was kind of silly. Like, when you look at how bad that was with him, he looks at the ground, sees Manu Ginobili's foot is over the line, and then decides, I'm going to take him out. Like, he kind of preemptively took Charles Barkley's advice that wasn't for him.
Right.
He's like, I'm taking that dude out right now. Screw these whistles. I'm taking it into my own hands. I'm Deion Waiters. I played 2 years at Syracuse. I'm going to take this dude out. This punk from, wherever Manu Ginobili's from. Israel, probably?
Argentina? Yeah.
I always get him and Tony Parker. I never get where they're from right.
Parker is from France.
He's from France. That's right. I always think he's from Argentina for some reason. Even though if I stop and think about it, I'm like, no. Think to the Olympics. You've seen these guys play a million times. You know where they're from.
Exactly.
You know it to be true.
You know
or
it.
Not true.
You know it.
But, sort of redemption. Last night we had OKC and the Spurs play again in Game 3, and it was a really good game. It was way back and forth. I mean, it was fantastic. The duel between Westbrook and Kawhi Leonard was absolutely off the charts. Kawhi Leonard showed you some stuff last night. You're like, how is somebody that good? It's almost Steph Curry-like, where you just kind of stop and go, how can somebody make these plays and make them back-to-back or make complex moves in sequence? The way he does that stuff, it's really beautiful and fun to watch. To me, I'm a known Steph Curry hater. Really more of a Warriors hater.
That is true.
I love the way Kawhi Leonard plays. I think he is spectacular and really, really easy and fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, from day one when he entered the NBA till now, you could see that his game has developed each and every year, from his dribbling skills to his ball movement to his offensive game. And we already knew he was a great defensive player. I mean, he's won Defensive Player of the Year back-to-back years now. And so just his overall game has developed to the point where he's become a two-way player that's almost unstoppable. And the way him and LaMarcus Aldridge have been playing in this series so far, you would almost think that they can help and take this team to the next round. And so, just to touch on OKC,
it's frustrating, isn't it?
They are frustrating to watch because you have two superstars in Westbrook and Durant. But I saw a crazy stat at halftime of their game last night where Westbrook had attempted 17 shots and Durant only had 7.
Last night?
Last night.
Really?
Yeah, at halftime, Westbrook was like, I don't know what it was, something out of 17, and Durant was 4 for 7.
This is the half. Okay, I believe that. Well, and it didn't seem to change at the end of the game either. It looked like Durant was just standing back and letting the game happen. I mean, he was watching it on offense, and he does that sometimes. That's one of the things he will do is he will be sort of passive. I think that's because the situation doesn't really matter to him so much as if you get him the ball, the context matters less than it does for a lot of other guys. Even less than somebody like, say, LeBron James or Steph Curry. Steph Curry can create when he's on the move. He is not as good at creating when he starts from a static position because of Kevin Durant's size, his height, and his speed, and his ability to get by guys, and his ability to make shots from whatever position he's in. I think he can just stand there, and it's okay in most cases because he can just chill out wherever he wants to on the court. If you can get the ball to him, he can make a shot, and it's a good shot no matter what it is. But you're right. The fact of the matter is he wasn't going after those shots. Even though he can do that, he wasn't. He was just watching the whole shot clock expire and watching Russell Westbrook take a bad shot and then Steven Adams clean it up and throw it back out to, Ibaka, who takes a poor contested 3. That should be Durant getting that ball from Steven Adams and hoisting up a 3 instead.
And that's the thing. Durant has all the skills in the world to take over a game, and it makes you wonder, like, who's the alpha dog on this team? Like, it needs to be Kevin Durant demanding the ball in those situations. He's the go-to guy. It's supposed to be his team. He needs to take over the game and bring it home for his team, but instead he's sitting off in the corner, watching Westbrook dribble the ball for 20 seconds and then putting up a shot with a contested hand in his face. And it's frustrating to watch because you look at this guy who, again, has all the talent in the world and is considered, a top 3 player in this league, and he's just sitting to the side being passive.
He's probably the guy on the court, even in that game, with that incredible level of talent. Maybe you'd take like LaMarcus Aldridge instead, but I think I'd probably take Kevin Durant as the number 1 option of anybody on either team in that series. To take a contested shot, to take a shot with a hand in your face.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean,
LaMarcus Aldridge is a close second. He's ridiculously good at that mid-range with somebody else who's also 7 feet having a hand up his nose. It doesn't even matter. Like, that whole series for him has been absolutely awesome.
Yeah, he's averaging almost like 30 points per game in this series so far.
He averaged, I think, 35 in the first 2 games. He didn't get anywhere near that this third game, but his presence was certainly felt. It felt like every time the Thunder went to make a run, Kawhi Leonard would dunk it, or he would throw it out to LaMarcus Aldridge, who was 15 feet out at a mid-range jumper. And it kind of reminded me of like vintage Chris Bosh in those big runs Miami had with the championship runs, where he would always be on the mid-range. He would always be open. And you're like, how does that guy always get open every time? It kind of felt like that last night with Aldridge, always being ready to pick and pop no matter what. No matter where he was in the court, he would just run to his same spot. You'd be like, well, there's the top of the key, and there's LaMarcus Aldridge, and there's the ball, and buckets.
Yeah, and when you have to account for where Leonard is at all times, it's going to leave, LA open for, those mid-range jumpers. And not to forget, those veterans, Tony Parker, Tim Duncan, Ginobili. You still got to watch out for those guys. They'll still hurt you.
I tell you, this is the thing we were talking about at the beginning of the season. It's so exciting watching them because you're like, who's going to come in? Who is it? You've got 8 guys who can make an incredible play. Let's just go through it. You got the old guard. You got Tim Duncan. You got Manu Ginobili. You got Tony Parker. And then you got the guys who've been there for a little bit. You got Boris Diaw. You've got Kawhi Leonard. You got, even Danny Green.
Patty Mills.
Yeah, Patty Mills was the star of the finals when they went up against the Heat. You've got... and then you got the new guys. You got LaMarcus Aldridge. You have,
David West.
David West. It's stunning. It's certainly addition by subtraction. What they took off that roster last season hasn't hurt them at all, clearly, because, if you take the Warriors out of the equation for this season, they have basically a record-breaking season. They've almost got to 70 wins themselves.
Yeah, without the Warriors, this is the best team in the league right there. And it's been consistent, almost 2 decades worth of just great basketball. This organization has done a tremendous job in just building for now and also building for the future. And to have, your stars like Parker and Duncan and Ginobili kind of realize that their prime has passed, and to kind of pass that torch along to Aldridge and Leonard shows to the type of guys that they have on that team.
A couple more notes on that game from last night. So talking about the old guys and them recognizing that they're kind of long in the tooth and it's time to give the game over to the new guys. You had Duncan coming in for that last play to be the inbounds guy, and then he puts his shirt on immediately. Like, he throws the ball in, and he just goes and puts his shirt on. He's like, I'm done.
That's all he did was throw the ball in.
Good game, coach. He just comes back over, he's like, okay, I'm good. And they show him there, he's like grinning like at the guy who's guarding him at the ref. He's like, hey, man, watch this. He had Tony Parker hitting a couple big shots at the end, too.
Yeah, he did.
It was not vintage Tony. I think we're never going to see that Tony Parker again, and that's a damn shame, because he probably... While he was my nemesis up against those Heat teams, denying Wade and LeBron a ring that one year, even though he was the guy in the way of your team getting the title that you wanted to see happen in that season, he was probably definitely one of my favorite players and one of the most have-to-watch guys because of his speed and quickness. His ability to get to the rim, and then when he got there, his ability to finish in every way imaginable was the thing that made him absolutely stunning to watch.
He was a great awkward finisher. He would take you off the dribble, and he would just make these incredible layups, whether it be a reverse or...
He had old man game.
Yeah.
With the young man's body.
Yeah. And to his credit, he knows his role now. He knows that he's not going to be the guy that's going to put up 20-plus points a game. He's out there to create for Leonard and Aldridge and to help space the floor.
And Ginobili's kind of become their Dellavedova in a way. Ginobili's kind of the guy that comes in. He's 80 years old. His knees have like 7 bandages on each one. He just gets beat up. He gets punched in the nose 3 or 4 times a game. He's always on the ground. But he's always diving for balls. Like, he's always constantly outworking the other guys. I think Ginobili and Duncan have done more for LaMarcus Aldridge's game than anybody. That guy is
especially Duncan
out of his mind this playoffs, particularly this season. Everyone's seen it now with the scoring, but if you've watched that team over the course of the season, he struggled early to fit into the system. Once he got the system kind of down, he struggled to find his place in it, to see what he can do and where he can fit in. Once he totally bought into the concept and was playing team ball, you started to see near the end of the season him really coming on. Of course, it was too late then for any real recognition because everybody's talking about, what's LeBron doing? They got a new coach. Here's the Warriors. They're running away from it. Here's the chase for 73.
And that was understandable that he would struggle in the beginning. I mean, he's coming into a new team. He's learning a new system. He's trying to get familiar with his new teammates. But eventually, he's a veteran, so it's going to click for him. And it's clicking at the right time.
He's not this year's Tracy McGrady. No. He's not the guy who's on the team chasing a ring this year.
No, he's not. He's a big contributor in a big way. And they definitely need him on the court to win a title, for sure.
But it really kind of puts a stark contrast to the Oklahoma City Thunder. You said it was frustrating, and I could totally understand that because it's the worst possible matchup if you're looking for the future of the Thunder. Because here you have a team that the Thunder could be. They drafted well. They got their guys in young. They built this great core. They did build a great core. They got to the finals. And then it kind of fell apart for a couple of years. You had a couple injuries and some other stuff, but the Spurs have dealt with that. They've had injuries. They've had years where guys didn't play. And they've been dominant for 2 decades now. They've been unstoppable for 2 decades. The combination of Duncan, Parker, and Ginobili is one of the greatest threesomes we've ever seen. If they win another title, you start talking about greatest team dynamic ever. You start talking about, are they better than the Bulls? That becomes a real conversation if and when the Spurs can win another title. And opposed to them, you got the Thunder. You got these guys who are super talented, unbelievably gifted with Westbrook and Durant. And you've got great bit players. I mean, you got a couple guys who are really good on that Thunder team. You've got the Ibakas of the world. Steven Adams has come on. Enes Kanter's even playing decent minutes for that team. But it really doesn't feel the same as the Spurs. It feels like here's this team with all this potential, all this athleticism, these elite players, 2 of probably the top 7 players in the NBA. And they just don't feel like they're really competitive with the Spurs. It feels like when the Spurs are on, the Thunder are kind of an afterthought. They can be decent when the Spurs aren't playing their game. But if the Spurs are doing what they want to do, the Thunder don't really matter. And that shouldn't be the case for a team that has that much talent, Yeah,
and what's when I look at the Spurs, I see a team. Even though they have big names like Aldridge, Duncan, Parker, Leonard, I still see a team that works together, moves the ball in cohesion, to get a great shot. When I look at OKC, I see Westbrook, I see Durant, and I see a bunch of other guys.
I see everyone trying to get their shot.
Yeah, because if you look at they do have ball movement at some times.
Yes.
But when you get in crunch time, in the fourth quarter, in the last 2 minutes of the game, their offense stalls. It's just either Westbrook or Durant trying to find a shot for themselves. They're not creating. They're not moving around. There's no ball movement at the end of those games. It's just those guys, ISO, trying to get a shot. And usually it's them taking a tough shot with a hand in their face.
Well, here's a decent juxtaposition for you. Good art school word there, juxtaposition. Here's a decent side-by-side for you. You've got one of the greatest foremen of all time, the greatest fours in Tim Duncan, taking the ball out in like the last play and then laughing about it and putting a shirt on and being like, it was a good game, boys. Let's go home,
Right.
On the other side, can you imagine Kevin Durant doing that ever in his career? No, of course not. In sort of the other side of the coin, Kevin Durant is in his prime, playing when he wants to as the best player maybe in the game. When he wants to turn it on, you don't stop him, period. And when he's not being given the ball, when Russell Westbrook is taking over the game, when Steven Adams is getting off of what it feels like more shots than him, when Durant is not getting free throws, he sulks. He's at home. It's the playoffs. It's the Spurs. You get a chance to go play the Warriors and then get to an NBA title, and you're sulking from the three-point line. You're not doing anything. You're not moving without the ball. You're not getting rebounds. You're just watching the game happen as though you're on the, it's not the front row, Kevin. You're in the game.
And I saw so much complaining out of the OKC players on no calls. Every time they would drive to the basket and miss, they were expecting a foul call, and they would just complain. They wouldn't get back on defense, and that's leaving the Spurs down on the other end with an open shot.
Now, we'll come back to Kevin Durant because there was another piece of news in this week with his height and how it's not quite what he's listed at. What he's listed at isn't quite right. But that hit on something I want to talk about. This is this week's Hawk Hookup.
And now it's time for a very special segment that we call the Hawk Hookup. Can you dig it?
The thing that drove me nuts this week, Two parts. First off, I tried to listen to the game last night. I like listening to these things on radio because you get these interesting hometown calls and you get all these personalities, and it's just, I think it's a different sort of fun way to take in basketball through the radio. I like going through during college basketball season and try and find like the official broadcasting network of the Oklahoma Sooners or Kansas Jayhawks or, West Virginia or whoever's playing that night. I like to pick up the radio call and listen to that as well as watch the games on TV. Well, I was listening to the Hawks radio network, and I don't want to say it was Mike Conti. It might have been Steve something, Zobel, whatever the other guy is. Mm-hmm. One of the guys on their radio network was going off because there had been a fourth foul call on the Hawks. Game 3 in Atlanta, 4 calls against the Hawks and 0 against the Cavs. And he's going on and on, I can't believe they would call this and blah, blah, blah. They're getting murdered out there. It's unbelievable. The refs are just giving this game to the Cavs. There have been no calls on the Cavs and 4 on the Hawks. And I can't believe that. There have been no calls on the Cavs and 4 on the Hawks. He kept repeating that. Yeah. I'm sitting there, I'm like, God, you homer. Then there's a whistle, and Kevin Love picks up a foul. And what does every player in the NBA do when they pick up a foul? What's the first thing they're going to do?
Complain to the ref?
Yeah, then you go to the ref and be like, oh, ref, what did I do?
Yeah.
I barely knocked him over. I barely hit him in the face.
Right.
And this dude on the Atlanta Radio Sports Network went berserk. He went bananas. He went off the rail. He was like, and Kevin Love is going to complain. Kevin Love, you've got 4 fouls against us and we only have 1. How dare you complain? The audacity, the blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I can't deal with this. Like, I can barely listen to this crap. Like, how are you going to go off like that? Like, that's so two-sided. That's so... You're complaining about the calls, and then their guy gets a foul and complains, and you're complaining about him complaining. Like,
yeah, that's definitely that hometown bias. He's catering to his audience.
This is why you're the Hawks. This is why your town has one championship, and you borrow one from St. Louis for the St. Louis Hawks, and why you aren't relevant ever in sports ever. You're a fun team. That's a nice dark horse pick in August for the Falcons, and a pick everyone thinks is popular this year because you won a bunch of games last season. But this is why you don't win rings. And
I got a nugget for your Hawks hookup there.
Oh, let's go. Let's hear it.
Atlanta is now 0-11 versus the Cavs in the postseason.
That's why they call it a rivalry, right?
If you say so. I guess so.
And they keep saying, we're going to give them something to think about.
Don't you have to win to make it a rivalry?
They keep saying, we're going to give them something to think about. We're going to give them something they're going to have to consider. Cleveland's going to know we were here. They said that last night, too. I listened to the post-game show. Like, we got to get in there for Game 4 and really make them think about it. Get in their head and let them know we're still here. I'm like, you're really not. You're so faint. You're 0-whatever. You're 0-1,000,000 in the NBA if you lose the first 3 games. So it's over. I'm calling it.
They must be talking about Jeff Teague's elbow.
Yeah, right. Jeff Teague's elbow looked pretty good when he was pushing LeBron James into the stands. I mean, that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, that was such a frustration foul because if you saw that play on the other end, Jeff Teague goes up for a layup. He thought he got fouled, so he's frustrated. And so he just comes back on the other end and just shoves LeBron. He might have complained,
but can you imagine if LeBron James did that? It would be plastered on every news source for the next 48-hour news cycle. LeBron James, thug.
Oh, and that guy would have went 10 rows into the stands. Yeah. If LeBron did that.
He would have punted him. He would end up with seats worse than the first time we went to see that blimp that goes around inside the arena would have never, the little T-shirts they dropped would have never reached you if you got kicked by LeBron like that. He's built like a linebacker anyway. He could have tackled you into the stands.
But that guy's okay because that looked like it hurt.
But yeah, and the other thing is the second part of this segment, this bit that we're doing that you guys hated initially, but with some work can be a decent bit that people might actually enjoy one day.
I'm starting to get there. I gave you a nugget today. So
you did. I like the nugget. I'm
working with you.
I like it. I like it a lot. They're an easy team to hate. It's a segment that's got wings.
To let y'all know, we do live in Georgia too, so yeah.
It's like Red Bull. It's got wings. But the other thing is Charles Barkley, after Game 2, of course, the Hawks allowed the Cavaliers to have a record night, shot and hit the most three-pointers ever in a game in the NBA. Like, let's take that in context. We've got a three-point run-and-gun team in the Warriors this season that set two records for two of the top 4 performances in a single season for three-pointers hit ever in Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Number 1 and number 4. Of course, Curry holds number 2 and number 3 as well. But number 1 and number 4 were set on the same team And the Cavs hit more threes than that team did in any game this season in a playoff game in the second round.
And it's 2 straight games. It's 2 straight games that they've scored 20, that they've made 20 plus 3-pointers. That's just crazy.
It's bonkers. It's absolutely crazy. And Charles Barkley after the game was kind of irate. He was like, you gotta set an example. You gotta put one of these guys on the ground. You gotta take them out. And he kind of softened his speech after the fact. And I understand why. He's got a career to look after and all that. And he didn't want somebody to get in the hospital or anything necessarily. But it's like in football when you're watching the opposing team's quarterback and they're dunking you down the field. They're throwing these 4-and-out, 5-and-outs, and just slowly downing you down until you're in the red zone and then, miraculously getting in the end zone somehow. And 2 or 3 drives of that and you're like, boy, can we get a nose guard to put his face in that dude's knee? I'm not saying you make it look like it was on purpose, but just do it.
And I think he was making that comment in the context that in that game too, Cleveland, they were blowing them out to the point where they were just taking threes just to get the record.
It was the end of that game, the fourth quarter. All the starters have been out almost the entire quarter, if it hadn't actually been the entire quarter. I know LeBron didn't really play in the fourth.
Yeah.
And they're still up by 30 or 40 or something goofy like that. And all the reserves for the Cavaliers are running plays in quotes, the same,
They're all taking threes.
They're just chucking it, just throwing it out to the three. Here's the 3 line, take a shot, it misses. I got the rebound, I'm under the basket, I'm passing it out for another 3. And it's a twofold insult to the Hawks. Because not only are you not taking the open shot, but you're going after the record directly. You're like, I don't care. And it's your scrubs, and you're just like, I'm not playing to be competitive anymore. I'm not playing to win the game even because it's already over. I'm not even just dribbling the clock out. I'm shooting threes because I want that record, baby. I want to go for it. And I think Charles is right. I played football in high school a long time ago. It was like a decade ago. And that was a real thing. You did not disrespect somebody, and they always said, keep your head on a swivel, look left and right, and never stay static when you're playing football. It's not quite the same now, but it used to be if somebody wasn't looking, you would take them out every time. And it's kind of a mentality that was prevalent in the NBA in the 80s and into the early and mid-90s, where you would have guys just getting smashed. Your Dennis Rodmans of the world would hurt you if you weren't looking right, or if you were trying to drive and put a layup in a contested area. While that's sort of mainstream basketball now, you can drive and do stuff like that, and you're not supposed to get hit that way. If you're insulting somebody, if you're going after them like that, you are disrespecting them, and the Hawks had every reason to feel disrespected. I mean, the first thing you want to say is, we'll win the game.
Right.
Don't let them do that. But clearly that wasn't the case. Clearly this Hawks team is kind of outmanned. I mean, they're a team that has decent athleticism and shoots threes. So they're going to be in games they shouldn't be, and that's kind of why they are where they are. They're a team that, without DeMarre Carroll, who went to the Raptors, they don't have the ability to stay with the Cavs normally, but they can shoot their way into a game. And that happened in Game 3, it happened in Game 1, in Game 2 it just wasn't the case. But so if you're not going to be good enough to stay with them, run with them, then you gotta put your shoulder in somebody. If that doofus on the end of the bench comes in and is just chucking it trying to get a record, man, you got to take him on the ground. You got to pick up a flagrant. You're also on the bench. Yeah,
I mean, they at times they can shoot the ball. At one point, they did have a double-digit lead in last night's game, but they weren't able to sustain it. And I do feel like they did feel like they were disrespected after that game too. When Cleveland was blatantly going for that record, and so they have the right to feel disrespected. And I almost compare it to baseball, where a guy hits a home run and kind of showboats, and then the very next time that he's up, the pitcher beams him for quote unquote disrespecting.
It's a little different. It's a little different, I'd say, because in baseball, that's a part of the game. And now, if you're up 12-0 and you hit a home run and you're dancing around the bases, you got what's coming to you. I will say that.
Yeah.
But if it's 4-4 and you hit a 2-run homer and it's the bottom of the 8th, man, dance a little bit. Flex some, show it off. Baby, you just hit a big play. That's fine. You know what? I'm perfectly fine with that. That's not quite what happened there, but I don't think you should be beamed just because you show a little enthusiasm after you hit a home run. However, if it's like I say, if you're up by 10 and you hit a homer and you go berserk, Or if you got guys who are doing nothing but swinging for the fences, trying to get like the record. No, I don't even know what the record is for home runs. I got to imagine it's ridiculous. I got to imagine like 3 or 4 pitchers on a team just melted down on the same day one time.
Right.
And it's probably like 25 runs or something crazy like that.
It's got to be up there something.
Especially because like you remember in the early 2000s, like everybody was scoring 12 runs. There were those couple seasons there in the mid 2000s, probably more like, where the scores were like 9 to 12 every night.
Bring back steroid baseball.
Oh yeah, definitely. Bring back the greenies. Definitely. Oh, put them on horse tranquilizer. Let's go. Let's go. I want my guys to have giant faces with huge chins. I want them to look like they're in pro wrestling or gladiators or whatever. And I want them to have arms that are bigger than a normal man's torso. Like, definitely.
Exactly.
I'm all for that because that makes the game way more fun. Like, them jacking home runs every night, them having races for 70 or 80 homers in a season, that's fun. This, like, small ball, pitching duel, ground out to whatever, man, I can do without that.
Yeah.
I can do without that garbage.
Yeah. Throw it away.
So,
throw it away.
Now, going back to what we were talking about before with Oklahoma City, with Durant, he actually got into a little bit of kind of trouble, more just funny news tidbit, where if you look anywhere in any official program or guide, like I've got the NBA app pulled up right now on my tablet here, and where I'm looking at it, it says that his height is listed at 6'9". Now, anybody who's ever watched a basketball game will tell you Kevin Durant is no 6'9". My man is not 6'9", has never been 6'9" since he was like an incoming freshman at Texas. He is clearly taller than that. And it's always been kind of a running joke, like, yeah, he's 6'9", whatever. But the thing is, he had a press conference leading up to Game 3 of Oklahoma City and San Antonio, and who's asked some question about, blah, 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 what do you think about these guys when they try and body up with you? And he's like, well, here I am, and they're short, and I'm 6'11". There's kind of a pause. Everyone's like, wait, what? Looking at their programs, like, wait a minute. And he's like, no, I'm 6'11". He's like, I'm listed as 6'9" because, it's basketball. For basketball height, I'm 6'9" because I want to be a 4. I don't want to be seen as, or I want to be a, what do you say, a 3 maybe? You don't want to be a 4?
Yeah, he was saying that the that 6'9" was the prototypical size for a small forward.
Yeah, and he wanted to be
anything taller, he would have been considered a power forward.
He wanted to be a 3 instead of a 4.
Right.
And he said, I mean, it's funny too because he was like, "Yeah, when I'm at the bar talking to ladies, I'm 7 foot." I think every man in the entire universe can relate to that. Because when I'm at the bar talking to ladies, or when I was at the bar talking to ladies, I was 6 foot. I'm 6'1", whatever. Right. How whatever you'll believe, that's fine.
I was pushing like 5'8" because I'm not that tall, but every inch helps.
What? You're not 5'8"?
Man, it could be.
I thought you were 5'8".
Maybe.
I thought you were 5'8".
Hey, I'll take
at
that.
least. I thought you were taller than that even. But
I'll take it. I'll take 5'8".
But it's funny, like him sizing down is an interesting phenomenon. We've actually got precedent for it. Bill Walton, way back in the day, used to say that he was 6'11" as well, I believe, because being 7 foot made you sort of look devalued and it made you a center, and he wanted to be something else. I believe somebody, I'm not sure who, but one of his coaches, I think, used to say, maybe it was Hubie Brown, used to say that he was 6'13", which is because he didn't want to call himself 7 foot. So like, all right, he's 6 foot.
And they just rolled with that.
It was just a joke, but like that he said. But I saw it on the Wikipedia page for him. And I don't remember who the heck said it, so I'm not going to annotate because I don't know.
Yeah. It typically, when you see these numbers fudged with their height, it's usually the shorter guys. For example, JJ Barea.
Yeah,
they have him listed as 6 foot. Now we all know he's not 6 feet tall.
And he always says, like, whenever they come out, a 6 foot guard, and they say JJ Barea, he laughs because he's like, I ain't never been to 6 foot. He's like, I'm 5'10" on a good day.
Right.
It's funny how honest they can be about that stuff. And part of the reason there was an article written about it is that like the NBA is really lax on how they adjust or allow you to list yourself as what your height you are. They measure you in the combine with and without shoes. And so you can use either, or you can use whatever you want, really. They're not like, it's not like the NFL where it would be a thing. Like Tom Brady can you imagine? Tom Brady has said he's 6'5". He's measured at 6'4". Height gate, it would be ridiculous. It would be like, it would too. Like, it would dominate the news waves.
It would just be because it's football. It would just be something for them to talk about.
Is there a competitive advantage for saying that you're 6'5" instead of 6'4"? Like, it would be ridiculous. And that's why we hate football. That's why we love basketball, because we're like, sure, be 7 foot, whatever.
Yeah, why not?
Come on.
Who cares?
Be 6'9". That's
Be
all
who
good.
you want to be.
Yeah. You do you. You the real MVP.
Speaking of that, did you hear that Lifetime, they made like a movie about Kevin Durant's mom, and it's called The Real MVP.
Is it really?
I'm not joking.
Wait a minute. Tell me more about this movie.
I mean, I don't know the details of it. I just heard that, they Lifetime or A&E, whatever that women's channel is, they made a real time movie based on the life of Kevin Durant's mom and her upbringing, I guess, of raising Kevin and his brother, and the name is The Real MVP, because if you guys remember when Kevin Durant won that MVP, I think it was 2 years ago or 2 years ago,
2 or 3 years,
2 or 3 years ago. He was emotional, and he was talking about his mom, and he said his mom was the real MVP.
The inspiring true story of NBA star Kevin Durant's mother, who put her own dreams aside and worked relentlessly to provide her own 2 sons as a young single mother with only the support of her own mom and best friend.
There you go.
0% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is 2 hours and 2 minutes. That is amazing. That's where we're at as a sports culture. We're willing to ingest that as a movie.
Tell me about it.
Good grief. But moving on from the NBA.
And now it's time for a segment that Marie wishes she was here for on the Stretch 5 podcast.
So, funny thing, the one time that Marie Rush, our NBA Jeremy Linsider, misses out on the podcast. You like that one, huh?
I do like that one. You know why, too.
Oh, man. Because of his hair? No.
No, because he plays on Charlotte, and
yes, he does.
We got through that first round, thankfully.
Just barely escaped it. I'm still sweating at night. I wake up, I'm like, Jeremy Lin!
I'm glad I don't have to see him anymore.
Kemba Walker! Just start yelling names.
Cody Zeller!
Hansborough! But her favorite player in college basketball, or one of them, her favorite team is the Baylor Bears, and her favorite player is UNC's number 2 UNC's Kennedy Meeks, center for North Carolina. He's one of the predominant big men in the country, and he was a junior this season. After they were eliminated by Villanova in the national championship game, he took some time and considered his options, and has finally come out to say that he's going to continue his studies in quotes because it's UNC, but he's going to continue his academic career, his college career at UNC for a senior season. Just bring it up because she thinks he's pretty. He's got nice arms. That's what
right? Okay.
That's her basis of judgment. He was the guy who was really fat when he came to UNC, and I don't say that lightly. He was like 360. He was a big dude. They may actually be incorrect. It may not be 360. It may be like 280.
Yeah, I'm looking at a photo of him right now, and he seems pretty big.
Yeah, well, he's lost about 100 pounds since he's been at UNC, so he's coming back for his senior season. That team's going to be loaded, relatively speaking. And college ball next year is going to be weird. There's going to be a couple teams, Villanova, North Carolina, Kansas, Duke's got a couple guys coming back. There's Louisville as well. There's going to be a number of teams that have a bunch of talent that are coming back, but who aren't going to be even considered like top contenders, maybe. Only because there's so many good freshmen coming in that the teams that get the freshmen are going to be your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's your Kentuckys, your Dukes, your Michigan States. Those teams have unbelievable recruiting classes coming in, but that's college. And right now we are in the midst of the NBA playoffs. So,
but this Meeks dude, I'm guessing he got some feedback that wasn't totally positive, which in turn kind of made his decision a little bit easier to come back to college.
I would guess that's the case. I'm trying to think of why he wouldn't come out this time. I'm trying to think. Do we have a bunch of really dominant centers in this draft? And that's something and that's
your expertise right there.
Yeah, but I can't think of any really. Scala BCA is coming out of Kentucky, and he's not great. It's all guards coming out in the first couple picks. Well, no, actually, that's not entirely true now that I think about it. Ben Simmons from LSU is coming out, and he's going to be your probably number 1 pick.
More than likely, yeah.
So there you go. There's a couple big guys coming out. I guess he thought he might be overshadowed. Or
so
maybe,
he's a center?
Say what?
Kennedy Meeks, he's a center?
He's considered a center in college. He'd probably be a 4 in the NBA.
Yeah.
My guess is that probably somebody in the NBA said, work on this and come back. Like, you have a lot of potential, and you have the ability to build a part of your game that will make you more valuable to the NBA next season. It's a good system. Roy Williams, say what you will about his, scandal, his fraud, academically, all that kind of stuff. And I say a lot about that, but say what you will about that. The man is a great coach, and he built an excellent system. So Kennedy Meeks is in good hands there, and he can build a couple things. There's several things he can do better. He was a good rebounder and a decent shooter. He can extend his range, get his mid-range better, and just continue to get in better shape. He's lost about 100 pounds, but if he loses a couple more pounds, gets some more muscle on there, and gets more aggressive with his offensive game, I think he can really be probably a lottery pick next season. So,
yeah, you definitely got to give your hand to, I don't know if it was the NCAA or the NBA or it was a joint decision, but to put this rule in place, allowing guys to get that feedback and to make a decision, a well-based decision, definitely goes a long way.
This might not be an Olympic-level podcast, but it is a podcast that's talking about the Olympics. It's the 2016 Summer Olympics in Rio. Men's basketball team talk starts now.
Moving on, we've got Rio coming up. It's in our sights now. It's coming up very soon. The Summer Olympic Games for 2016 in Rio, Brazil. It's Brazil, right?
Yep.
Yeah, just making sure. We've got Team USA getting all set to, get their roster together and get ready for the games that are upcoming. There's other teams that are putting their stuff together, putting their best players. You've got a whole bunch of injuries in the NBA this year. I think it's going to really shake up the way these games look. Marc Gasol is out for the season with the Grizzlies. Well, that's bad for the Grizzlies, and it was really bad for them in the first round. However, it may also be bad for Spain's national team because their two centerpieces are the two Gasol brothers, Marc and Pau. Pau, I don't know if he's playing, but he's certainly welcome if he wants to. If he wants a roster spot, he's probably still the best player they've got. Second best would be Serge Ibaka. But Marc Gasol will have to probably sit this one out because of his injury. And then you've got a whole bunch of dudes from Team USA who are similarly in injury trouble. You've got the two guys from the Clippers, CP3 and Blake Griffin. Anthony Davis is going to be out. You've got Chris Bosh is probably going to be out for it as well. Gosh, who else is out? There's a bunch of guys. I'm missing.
Yeah, John Wall, who just had off-season surgery, so he's not going to be there.
Yep.
And then, a question mark is still Paul George. Whether or not he wants to play is up to him.
I'm sure he does want to play. Injury. I'm sure he does as like redemption. Because he was the up-and-comer. He was going to be the guy who, got his shot, who was going to be one of the young leaders of this team. And then he had that tragic and really nasty leg injury in that select scrimmage, USA versus USA. I'm looking at the list here. I don't see too many guys who are. I immediately jump to they're injured. Like, really almost none. Oh, yeah, Michael Conley. Michael Conley's also hurt.
Yeah, I think that's the only other one.
But
because you mentioned Curry, right?
Yeah, Curry. Yeah, I didn't mention him, but yeah, he's obviously coming back, so we'll see about him.
Yeah,
it might be the case where he gets done with the season and whatever ends up happening with the Warriors' fate, he's like, oh man, that was a long season.
Yeah, because if they play into June again, these exhibition games start up in July, mid-July, so that's not a lot of rest.
It's good for us though. Oh,
yeah.
I love it. This is my favorite. My favorite thing is when we have the Summer Olympics because you get the college and NBA season starting in the fall, and then that carries all the way into the beginning of summer, just in time for the Olympics. The Olympics end in like August, and then you've only got like 2 months of awful football before you can start back up with the next basketball season. So it's great.
I'll take a month of awful football rather than a summer full of baseball. So I'll take that.
Didn't they say there's like 6,000 games in a regular season for baseball or something silly like that? Maybe that might be exaggerating on that number, but it's ridiculous.
It's something crazy because, I don't know how many teams are in baseball, 30 maybe, and they're all playing 162 games a season, so...
You can do the math.
Yeah. Y'all calculate that.
Yeah, send it to us at Stretch5 Pod. But looking at this roster, it's actually kind of underwhelming when you consider that some of the guys who were such big stars for the team the last go-round are, frankly, old. Kobe's not going on this one, I don't think.
No.
He'd probably be welcome right now if he wanted to sit on the bench, but I don't think he wants to. Anthony Davis is hurt. LeBron and Wade are still very, very good, but they're not the LeBron and Wade.
Wade is not playing in the Olympics.
He's not playing this year?
No.
And LeBron's not the LeBron of 2012. I mean, if he plays like he did in the finals last year, he's actually better. But that's, it remains to be seen. You've got the three guys who played originally in Oklahoma City with Durant, Westbrook, and the Beard.
James
Harden, thank you. You've got Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, of course. You've got the Manimal, Kenneth Faried. Rudy Gay is somehow made the roster. Paul George, he of the formerly broken leg. You got a bunch of dudes.
I feel like they can find somebody better than Rudy Gay. I mean,
Gordon Hayward?
Yeah, I'll probably take Hayward over.
I would take Hayward over him. Oh, actually, you have another guy from the Warriors. I forget how many of these guys became Warriors. Andre Iguodala is also on the select squad. I think it's what you have to balance when you're talking about this roster is how other teams are also going to go back and forth and try and strategize against you. I don't know that you can put DeAndre Jordan on that team because the other teams are just going to foul him every time because that's their only shot at winning against that team. They've no chance, 0% chance to win that game if you're not using some kind of tactic that isn't standard basketball.
Now, the question can be asked, though, what are the rules for international basketball? Can you just foul a guy and put him on the free throw line to slow down the game?
That's
and another thing, with having Jordan on the team, there's no goaltending really in international basketball. You can touch a ball when it's still on the rim.
The sound you just heard was my iPad smacking into a piece of Tupperware I have up here on the high quality broadcast booth, aka a bookshelf. that my microphone is hooked up to. Instant replay. So now you're all deaf twice, but whatever. But I don't know. I'm not. I was actually going to look that up, that rule right now, to see what is the rule in FIBA. Can you?
Because he actually comes in handy when you're talking about rebounding. Because the rebounding rules are a little bit different internationally than they are in the NBA.
You can grab it when it's over the cylinder.
You can grab it when it's over the cylinder. You can tap it in. So with his height and with his ability to rebound the ball, he's actually a pretty decent fit for that team when needed.
Okay, so there's actually one of the first things that comes up when I look at it is what is a technical foul in FIBA, but it's not going to load. So we'll get to that another day.
We'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, we'll work on that one. I did not expect to have to answer questions about FIBA rules.
Caught you off guard, huh?
A little bit. I got this sheet of ideas and notes and things, but that's not one of them. But let's talk about the roster because it could be really interesting who they start. You've got the best players in the world all play for the USA. That's never a surprise. It's not a secret. We know. Since the 90s, it's been the case. They haven't always won, but the best talent has been on Team USA. This roster's iteration should be no different because you've got Durant, Curry, LeBron. That's already, what else do you need, really? But you got a couple others, too. And you got spots that it's kind of you've got one spot where we're not really sure who it's going to be as the five. Carmelo Anthony plays out of his pants when he plays on the national team. He always plays incredibly well. And that could be the case for a number of other guys who are really talented and up and coming, but haven't really had a chance to show out so much in the playoffs, and definitely not on the national team stage. Like guys like Jimmy Butler, maybe even Gordon Hayward or DeMar DeRozan, your favorite. Andre Drummond is probably going to be the backup center. Probably. You're probably going to see DeMarcus Cousins as the head five for this team.
Are you playing Drummond over DeAndre Jordan?
I don't know if you can play DeAndre Jordan. I don't know if you can take him. I think his free throw problems are actually going to create a strategical disadvantage for Team USA.
Drummond is worse than Jordan. He's statistically the worst free throw shooter in history.
You're right. Is this going to be another one of those teams?
There really is no toss-up there.
That's also kind of the problem the Team USA had like in 2004, where they won the bronze. because they had a whole bunch of problems with free throws and guys making silly mistakes because they weren't used to the differences in the game. I mean, we talked about how we might even put someone like Draymond Green as the 5, but I don't know that would work because I think I don't know how big he is. He's only, he's
6'7".
He's 6'7". That means that your 3 is taller than your 5.
It would definitely have to be based off of the matchup, who they're playing, who that other team's starters are. When we were talking off air, I was talking about what my starting lineup would be, and I was saying I would have Curry at the 1, Westbrook at the 2. At the forward positions, I would have LeBron and Durant. And then, like we said, it's that center position that we're kind of iffy on. If you ask me, I was thinking LaMarcus Aldridge.
That's not a bad pick because he can stretch the floor. He can go up and get those rebounds. I don't know that he's going to be as good at doing that as some of the other guys. I mean, I don't know that Cousins is going to necessarily go up and get you 20 rebounds either. He does in the NBA.
But he could.
He does in the NBA. Let's be honest. Yeah. He does. But
I mean, my ideal pick, of course, would be Anthony Davis, but he's injured, so I can't put him in there.
I mean, he's the one. He's the one you would love to have.
Clearly,
we agree. I think pretty much on those. I would go with Curry at the 1, Westbrook at the 2, LeBron at the 3, Durant at the 4, and I think I would go with Cousins at the 5. I think you do put Cousins at the 5 because it's a different game. It used to be the case, to be honest, that USA basketball played that slow, methodical, big dude in the middle game, and the rest of the world played that kind of more Spurs running gun, like with 4 guards and a big man who can stretch the floor. And it's funny because that's kind of flipped recently.
Yeah, and you do kind of have me leaning towards DeMarcus Cousins because he's a big guy. He can get you the rebounds and whatnot, but you also kind of forget that he's developed kind of an outside game. He can knock down a jumper. He can knock down a 3-point shot.
He's a very
plus he can handle the ball. He's not a big guy that's sloppy with his handles. He can bring up the ball. He can bring the ball up the court for you.
He has handles. He can drive it. He can make plays for his teammates, despite the fact that he is a human brick wall. He is absolutely enormous. He is listed at 6'11" and 270, and I think both of those are conservative, to be perfectly honest.
You almost forget that this dude is only 25 years old, too.
Isn't that unbelievable? He feels older to me because I watched him play at Kentucky in 2010.
Right.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And he's 25. Here's a scary thought. Ready for this, basketball fans? If he ever gets traded, just start crying immediately. Just uncontrollably weep because your franchise and your season and every season is over forever. He's 25. He's coming into his prime. He's coming into his prime.
I was about to say, if he's not already in the prime, he's getting ready to start the prime of his career. And he's already putting up massive numbers. So just imagine this dude on a good team, man.
Well, look at the stats that Andre Drummond put up this year and how incredible he was. And he's a poor man's DeMarcus Cousins. And DeMarcus Cousins is getting better still.
So what's the knock then? Because you have Drummond and his team made the playoffs. Is it because the team is in the East? Is it because he has better players surrounding him? What's the reason that his team is making the playoffs, but Cousins can't get his team to the playoffs?
There's a couple reasons. It's not a great roster the roster has talent for the Kings. You've got Rondo, you've got Cousins.
Rudy
Gay. Absolutely. But it doesn't really fit perfectly well. It doesn't make sense, The roster for Detroit makes a lot more sense. Those pieces fit together better. We saw that when they played the Cavs. Even though they were swept, it was a good series. I think that's safe to say. Even though they were swept, it wasn't a series where you were like, okay, whatever.
I can see that because you could just, by looking at those two teams, you could tell that Detroit was the team that gelled together, that had that cohesion, whereas in Sacramento it just seemed like a bunch of guys on the court trying to figure each other out.
And it doesn't help that Sacramento's had how many coaches in are we at 6 coaches in 6 years, something to that effect?
It's something like that, but the overall picture is like 12, 13 coaches within the last 25 years. It's something ridiculous. So
it's absolutely goofy. It's goofy to me that people expect Cousins to have this higher than his coach's level of maturity and the ability to stay composed despite unearned negative rep and easy whistling on him. He gets constantly whistled for stuff that you're like, come on, man, that's not something you would call a normal NBA player, rather. No less like somebody who should be considered in the All-Star race every year without question. Maybe the best center in the game.
And I almost feel like him being on the Olympic team should be beneficial to him because he's surrounded by other great players and he can pick their brains as far as being a leader and motivating teammates to bring out the best in them. And so, he's surrounded by guys like LeBron, like, Durant, and just other stars and leaders of their own respective teams. I feel like he can take that experience and take it back with him to help his team out in the future seasons.
I mean, I'll put it to you this way about the Sacramento Kings. And I agree with you, by the way, about him having a chance to sort of blossom and show off and show out. And he did kind of in that select games, too. He looked great. He killed it during those games. And he kind of disappeared during the season, but that's because his team's... There's several factors. It's the fact that his team doesn't fit together well. He didn't get along with his coach, and his coach came in and immediately was like, anybody can be traded, which was a dumb thing to say. And he's on a team that's on the West Coast and isn't good. Let me ask you a serious question here. How many times were you able to watch Minnesota if it wasn't for League Pass this season?
Once, maybe, if any. I don't know if they had any national televised games.
And that's a hot team. That's a team that we were really excited about because it's a lot of fun pieces on that team with Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins and my boy Shabazz Muhammad. That team is full of guys you want to watch. It's full of players you have a great interest in.
Got to get that Shabazz shout out in there, huh?
Every time. We love you, Shabazz. Shout out to Shabazz Muhammad. No, but it was a team that's full of interesting, dynamic pieces, and any NBA fan looks at that roster and says, "Oh, I want to watch whoever they're playing." Remember that game they played against the Warriors? It was awesome. Like, it was a great game. Now, that team's never on TV, or at least not where you can see it, not where I can see it.
Right.
And that's a team we want to watch. So you look at the Kings, who are a dysfunctional bunch of... They're a fun team to watch, but they're not good. And they've got pieces that are interesting, but they're not cohesive. And they had a coach who was recognizable, but he doesn't fit. So naturally, you're not going to see very much of them, and your average NBA fan is going to see like, oh, Sacramento is playing Phoenix.
All they'll see is the highlights of Cousins getting a technical or something like that. Yeah,
every time you see him, it's just him arguing with somebody or smacking some player and getting a tee.
Right.
Or fouling somebody a little too hard and kind of Jeff Teaguing him into the stands. Mm-hmm. Seriously. And so that's what the impression is. And so when you talk to NBA fans, like, he's a big thug. He just throws people around and hurts them and fouls. And, oh, he's got a bad attitude. You're like, no, he doesn't. Have you ever actually watched his game?
Yeah, and that's why it surprises the average NBA fan when they're watching the Olympics and they're seeing him do things like this.
And dunk and smile and have a a good time. Yeah. And you're like, yeah, when you're winning, when you're on a good team, oh, that's interesting. When I'm on a good team, everything. I have fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's kind of goofy that he's kind of stigmatized the way he is, but we'll see him, I think, as a starter. And I think we have a bunch of interesting pieces and discussions to have about that team, but we'll get to more of that when the games get closer. We got more NBA basketball going on right now. And we have one more thing coming up, and that is...
Time now for the non sequitur story of the week. Prepare to get weird.
So we've got a story here where the NERC, you know the NERC, you know NERC, you know. Sure. The Natural Environment Research Council, which is a group in England who does, kind of exploratory, biological, natural research. They go out and they... I'm not really sure what exactly they do because the story did not go into that, but rest assured, they're a council that researches the environment. Nerd. Well, they had a vessel, a seafaring boat vessel that they were going to name. They didn't have a name for it, and they thought, well, we're going to leave this up to the people. We're going to put it online, have a poll, and have everyone vote on it. And whatever it is that comes out of that poll is what we'll name the boat. Now, the problem is this poll was online. And you never put a poll online if you want it to be taken seriously. They had a whole bunch of selections as to who could, whatever the name was going to be, a bunch of different choices. And one of the choices was, of course, something silly. Someone decided to throw something funny in there, and this caught the attention of the internet. Everybody in the internet, all the way across all the intertubes, decided that this one ridiculous choice, which I will reveal in a moment, was the one they were going to vote for, and subsequently it won in a landslide. It destroyed the other candidates. That name, of course, was Boaty McBoatface. Boaty McBoatface.
Brilliant.
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 Boaty McBoatface almost doubled the second place candidate for this vote. Just demolished it, dominated it. And so Nurk, later on, or this week, comes out with a statement, and it's like, well, we're not going to name it that. We're, no. We're Nurk. We don't name it. We don't name things silly things. We're Nurk.
Right. Which would make sense.
And so instead they went with the fourth place finisher, which I think was probably the thing they thought would win this poll. And it's the ship's going to be called the RSS Sir David Attenborough, who of course is that British voice of all the Planet Earth documentaries. The one who talks like this in its natural habitat. You know, that guy.
Right.
And it's a great name. Like, that's fine. For a research vessel, it's excellent. You know, it would be like if we had a choice between, and I totally lost the guy's name. I had it right there. The guy who does Nova. Neil deGrasse Tyson. If it was the RSS Neil deGrasse Tyson, but like the person who got the first place votes was going to be the RSS Bill Nye the Science Guy. You can kind of see where they'd be like, no.
Yeah.
But anyway, there was kind of an uproar, like, oh my God, it's supposed to be Boaty McBoatface. He won the poll. What are you doing? And so as a consolation, they've decided to name their remote research submarine after that top vote getter. So you're going to have the research vessel SS Sir David Attenborough dispatching the research submarine Boaty McBoatface into the depths of Britain, the seas in that area, doing natural research and whatever else it is that a Nurk vessel does.
And just to throw in there, the James Harden, the guy that coined the phrase Boaty McBoatface, he told reporters that the name appeals to the child within us. and so that's why it was so popular among the 100,000 plus voters that chose that name. So yeah,
I mean,
I guess so.
I think I want to rename the Charlotte Bobcats or Charlotte Hornets to Bricky McBrickface. That's Chucky McChuckface.
Floppy McFlopface.
Crying Jordan McCrying Jordan face.
Or how about team eliminated from the playoffs?
Oh, man. Another day, another elimination. And another day, another round of NBA games. And next week, we've actually got a whole bunch of NBA games coming up. Let's wrap this thing up with talking about games going forward. What you're looking forward to this week in basketball.
Well, I mean, I'm expecting Cleveland to sweep Atlanta. If they're shooting those threes the way they are, I can't see Atlanta winning a game. So I'm expecting Cleveland to close it out on Sunday. Today, actually, you have Miami and Toronto playing in Game 3 down in Miami.
5 o'clock, I think?
5 o'clock game, yeah. Right. So that should be a good matchup. I'm expecting Miami to come out at home and to bring the energy. It's going to be interesting to see how Toronto comes out with Lowry and DeRozan both struggling, coming off of really bad shooting games, even though they won the game in overtime. And then, of course, later tonight, you do have the Warriors in Portland playing in Game 3 out in Portland. And from what we're hearing, Steph Curry's likely not to play in this Game 3 either, which I don't really see a big issue with because his team is up 2-0. And if they can go up 3-0, I would just sit them.
They need to leave. They need to leave him out for the whole series. There's no reason.
Yeah,
I mean, unless Portland pulls off some miraculous homestand and it's 2-2 going into Game 5.
That would be the only scenario that I see them bringing him back if somehow Portland can win the next 2 games and go back to Oakland tied 2-2. Even if Golden State comes out of Portland with a 3-1 series lead, I would not play Curry in the next game. Like, give him all the time that he needs to get that knee healthy and ready for the next round, whether it be OKC or the Spurs that they face.
You know, it's it's interesting what you said about the Heat, how they're going back home, because they've fared pretty well, it looks like, so far at home. They won all 3 of their games in Miami in the first round against the Hornets. It looks like they won game 1, 2. Oh no, they didn't. They won 3 of their 4 at home. They won game 1, game 2, and then game 7.
5 at home.
Yep, game 5 was at home.
They played well at home. In the beginning of the season, they kind of struggled. They were inconsistent, but towards the end of the regular season, they really started to string a number of home game wins, and they've taken that into the playoffs where they've been pretty dominant for the most part at home. So that's why I'm expecting them to really come out and get behind, the crowd's energy and to hopefully, put a nice whooping on the Raptors today.
Well, on the other hand, you got the Portland Trailblazers, the other team we were talking about, who actually won out their home games in the first round against the Clippers, game 3, 4, and 5, or 3, 4, and 6, I should say. Now, to be fair, those games were not quite the same because you had no Blake Griffin, no Chris Paul. So, it's not quite the same thing. But I'm looking forward, honestly, to Dwayne Wade being Dwayne Wade. I'm looking forward to Whiteside playing better. He had a garbage game.
He definitely needs to play a lot better. What's his name? Jonas Valanciunas on the Raptors really took it to him, especially in the late minutes of that overtime game. He was just out hustling them. He was getting to all the loose balls, getting all the rebounds, and really that was the difference in that game.
Kind of murdered you guys. I'm looking forward to seeing if Lowry can keep it up for the Raptors. If it was just sort of a fluke that he's a great player and great players are sometimes going to have good games even if they're hurt, or if he's getting back on his feet, in which case we have a real series. If not, I think it's still over in Miami's favor, probably. If Lowry can't get back on track.
Yeah, though Lowry and DeRozan both need to get back on track. They can't keep combining for 16 out of 34 each night. I mean, they got lucky with that win in game 2. They did have a couple of big shots down the road, but it's been so inconsistent, not in just this series, but overall in the playoffs. They've just been back and forth. And even in the last game from the free throw line, they're even struggling. I think DeRozan, he was like 2 for 8 in game 2, and he's an 85% free throw shooter.
Man, I mean,
you got to think it's something mental at this point, right? I mean, these are guys that are all stars. They're stars of their team.
Wasn't he like 1 for 8? Is that what you said? Yeah, like it was unbelievable.
Their team has won 50+ games this season, but yet in the playoffs,
I was watching that game, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, he's gonna miss the shot,
and he's missing them badly too. It's not like they're rolling off the rim. He's clanking them off the back iron.
It's another situation where the announcing crew is talking about how unexpected this is. They're watching him shoot the free throws, and the guy's like, I've never seen him shoot free throws like this before. And you're sitting there thinking to yourself,
it's out of the ordinary. That's why you got to think it's something mental, because it's not something that you're used to seeing out of these guys.
Well, but talking about back and forth, without Marie here, it's been us back and forth. It's been about an hour and 15, so I think that's going to be about do it for this iteration of the Stretch 5 podcast. Like we always say, you can reach us on Twitter at Stretch5Pod or Stretch5Podcast@gmail.com. Send us your reviews, 5-star reviews. We'll get read when one of those is put up on iTunes.
Still waiting.
You can be the first. Join us. We the North. We the Stretch. Anyway, we'll talk to you guys later. Have a good week. For Brian McCullough.
Peace.
I'm Brad Sturgeon. Peace.